Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. My name is Hamish Alangaratne, and since 2023, I've been interviewing some of the most talented and well-respected quality leaders in the pharma and biotech industry to learn how they got to where they are now. This season is all about our guests and their journeys. Why they got into science, how they got into quality, their biggest challenges and greatest learns, and the highs and lows along the way. Every week, I'll be bringing you a new guest with the purpose of inspiring the next generation of quality leaders. Welcome to Season 3. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. Today's guest is Ashley Argiras. Ashley is the Vice President of Quality at Recursion, an AI-enabled drug discovery company. Ashley is someone who's redefining what quality leadership can look like in biotech. She started her career at Eli Lilly as a clinical research associate before moving through senior roles at Vertex and Karuna before joining Recursion. What stands out the most when speaking to Ashley is how she's challenged outdated thinking around compliance and inspection readiness. We talk about building high-impact teams, the role of critical thinking in quality, and why asking the right questions is more important than having all the answers. For anyone working in a platform biotech or clinical development who wants to understand how quality can be a strategic enabler and not a blocker, this is the episode for you. So let's get into it. Hi, Ashley. Welcome to Let's Talk Quality. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. So happy to be here, and thanks for having me on the show.
No, my pleasure. Tell the listeners and the viewers where you are based in the world right now.
Yeah, so I live in Chicago. So I'm in the River North area of Chicago. That's where my home is. My company is based in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I spend a fair amount of time there as well.
Very good. Right. Well, actually, I've done a very brief introduction for you, but I couldn't never do it justice. So if you could give everyone just a very quick overview of who you are, what your role is, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name is Ashley Argiras. I have the pleasure of leading the quality program at Recursion. Sort of a little bit about my past. I grew up on the clinical side of things, actually, working in large pharma. And then through my career, it started to get a little bit smaller and smaller and smaller until I really got into the startup side of biotech. Spent some time working for Eli Lilly, Vertex. I did a stint at Karuna, and then now at Recursion Pharmaceuticals, which is an AI-enabled drug discovery company.
Excellent. So you've got an interesting background. Not many of the people I've interviewed have started in clinical research. So let's talk a bit about that. Let's go right to the start, I suppose. So how did you initially get into science and end up with Eli Lilly?
Yeah, so getting into science is actually goes back to when I was in high school. I had an amazing chemistry teacher, and one of the projects we did was making ice cream. And, the mind of a high schooler, I was like, well, this is cool. If I can make ice cream, like I'm in. So that really started my love for chemistry and science more generally. I went to Indiana University, studied chemistry. From there, sort of when I graduated, I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do. And to be honest, I think at the time I didn't realize that pharma was even an option. And I started working for a couple of the university medical centers around Chicago as a study coordinator, which for your listeners that don't know what that is, that's somebody at a clinic site who's actually responsible for operationalizing a clinical trial, working really closely with the investigators. That sort of helped me realize that I was really passionate about getting new medicines to patients and the potential of treating diseases that hadn't had any treatments historically. So from there, I ended up going and working for Lilly as a clinical research coordinator, which is the coolest job I've ever had. That's where you actually go to the sites and you are the first layer of quality on behalf of the sponsor at a site, looking at how the site is running the clinical trial, making sure that everything's done according to any of the regulations, but also the protocol and ethics. So that was super cool. And that's what really got me passionate about quality and doing things really well and in a very patient centric way.
So I want to just go back to the ice cream topic. So you like you liked the thought of making ice cream. Therefore, the natural the natural transition is into the pharmaceutical industry from there.
Exactly. I mean, if you can use science to make ice cream, what can you not use science for?
Exactly,
So,
I agree. I agree. So fine. So you spent 8 years at Lilly? Is that right?
yeah, working for Lilly. So
Yeah.
in a number of different capacities. Initially, I worked for Lilly. They gave me my first start as a clinical research associate within
Mm,
the clinical operations side of things. And then, sort of as the industry goes through the cycles of outsourcing, we were outsourced, still fully
mm.
dedicated to Lilly. So I worked on Lilly trials exclusively for, yeah, like nearly the first decade of my career.
Yeah. Wow. So how did that transition into an actual quality assurance role? How did that come about?
Yeah. So again, when I was the a clinical research associate, a lot of that was going to sites and making sure that the way they were running the trial sort of adhered to all of the regulatory standards, but
Mm,
then also making sure that it was ran in a way that was pretty operationally
mm,
efficient and following the protocol and things like that. And I started to see a desire. To go to sites. I was on what we called like a SWAT team. So that was going to the sites that had some particular challenges or issues. And I really liked that problem solving side
mm,
of things. So where there were sites that may have never done research before, they were
mm.
incredible clinicians, like really, really passionate about their patient populations, just
Yeah.
hadn't done research before.
Yeah.
Being able to go and help them understand what quality looked like in a clinical research setting, which is a little bit different than just a clinical treatment setting. I felt really passionate about that. And then with Vertex, that was the first role that I had that was a formal quality role. And
Mm,
I appreciate so much the people at Vertex for really giving me that chance to step into a more formal quality role and get a little bit more formal quality experience.
mm.
And from there, I was in love, and the rest is history.
And was it like a decision that you made that you wanted to go in when you joined Vertex? Was that a decision, strategic decision for your career that you wanted to move into a quality position?
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
We sort of working on the Lilly trials. I was in constant communication and contact with quality representatives because, again, I was at sites who had a lot of challenges,
Yeah.
and it was just such a cool role that I really admired, to have people that were fully dedicated to ensuring that the sites had the tools that they needed to succeed,
Mm,
and to run the trials and take care of the patients. So anything that I could do to help somebody else do the greatest work that they could do, I wanted to be a part of that.
mm. What was it about quality? I know you've touched on it there, but like, what was it in those early parts of your career that you that really drew you into that world?
Um, so what's interesting is I've definitely evolved in my quality philosophy and quality thinking. So I think the greatest parts that I love of quality, I don't even know that I appreciated at that time.
Mm,
But at that time, thinking back, I would say that it was just the opportunity to make a meaningful impact.
mm,
And I really looked at that role as almost like a patient representative
Mm.
from the sponsor company. Like when you're looking at how you can make an impact and how you can add value, it's not for you quality to do something for quality, right?
Yeah.
It's to make the users' lives better, the patients' lives better, the trial better. Like at that time, and reminding you that my whole history up until that point was very clinical focused. So I had no concept of GMP at that point, but
Yeah.
um, it was the opportunity to make things easier for people and thinking
Mm.
about, again, just like what is the guidance, what are the tools, what are the ways that we can think through problems, like how, and I think a lot of it was just the critical thinking aspect.
Mm.
There's no, within clinical, really no right and wrong answer.
Mm.
It's thinking through and weighing risk and benefit of everything, and to
Mm.
be able to do that as a job was really, really cool.
And how was it when you went into that? Was that a leadership role with that Vertex, that first role, or were you managing
Not when I
people?
started.
Yeah.
Yeah, not when I
Okay.
started.
Fine. So how did that, going into quality for the first time at Vertex, how did that evolve into managing people and building teams?
Yeah, yeah. So I think one thing that is sort of goes to the heart of who I am, I very much am passionate about doing what's best for the greater good. So sort of if you think about the saying of a rising tide raises all boats, um, that I truly, truly believe in. So going into my first formal quality role at Vertex, it was learning, a lot of learning from like incredibly talented, smart people. But
Mm.
something that I really noticed was that we weren't always doing our best work. And this is where I really realized within quality, it's easy to fall into that trap of, well, we're doing this because we're doing
Mm.
this. Like, we're doing this
Mm.
because the procedure says we're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing this. We're doing this because this is what the inspector wants. And I think sort of part of my just personal ethos is, but wait a minute, like I'd had all this training in critical thinking and really like how to think through problems. It's like,
Mm.
wait a minute, if we're sitting here saying this isn't the best way to do it or this doesn't make sense, how do we expect anybody else to listen to what we're saying
Mm.
and follow along? And I think that's where I really started to move into first a leadership without authority type of role,
Yeah.
really using influencing within like my quality teams to be like, guys, is there a different way that we can think about this? Can we try doing something a little bit differently? Like, why are we doing this? Because if all of us can be on the same page about what we're really trying to achieve and what our objectives are, I think that we can work together to make more of an impact. And I think the leadership saw that and recognized it. And then I took on several different roles within the company, really building out, different types of teams, doing different types of things within quality.
So let's talk about this then a bit more, because this sounds like quite a defining time in your career.
Mhm.
Um, so it sounds like you've almost challenged the traditional philosophy or way of thinking within, from a quality perspective. So going in, like, how did that whole transition, or that sort of realization, how was there anything that triggered that? Like, how did that realization come about to you?
Yeah. So I think sort of in my earlier times within clinical, um, it was building a super strong foundation, right?
Mm.
I was very, very familiar with how trials were ran, why we did certain things in different ways, different approaches to help supporting sites. I built a really, really good foundation, and I was an avid consumer of knowledge. And so I
Mm.
just wanted to learn everything that I possibly could.
Yeah.
You're right. I think Vertex was the transformational point in my career that I
Mm.
will be forever grateful for that company for allowing me to have. And it was sort of I finally got the confidence to ask questions.
Mm,
Not in a like I'm learning, but in a way that's like, this isn't making sense to me.
mm,
I'm not understanding. And I think, again, like if you've been within biopharma for a long time, I think everybody's familiar with the mindset of like, this is how we do it. This is how we've
yeah,
always done it. This is what the SOP says. This is,
yeah,
and and I think I was able to take that critical thinking that I learned early in my career, the build on the strong foundations that I had early in my career, and then suddenly start asking questions in a way that's like, I'm trying to make sense of this. I'm trying to make sure that, I understand the specific purpose for why we're doing X thing. And I think that was really the turning point for me. Once I built that confidence, to be able to start asking questions, then I think I was on a quest. I was on a
mm,
quest to find, like, why are we doing things, and is there a different way? And then very humbly, do I even understand the foundations as well as I thought I did?
mm,
And this goes to where, people will say like, oh, it's how we've always done it, it's in the procedure. um and now suddenly I'm saying like, but is this actually what the regulation says or how it says it?
yeah,
And really going back and then starting to become a bit more of a student of ensuring that I understand exactly what the first principles of the problems are,
mm,
so that when I'm thinking through the solutions, I can think through solutions that actually address the first principles of the problem and the objectives of what we're trying to achieve.
yeah. It's really interesting. Do you think there are like obviously critical thinking is a great transferable skill, but obviously a lot of people fall into quality and they may start in sort of microbiology or QC or engineering backgrounds. What for people that have not worked in quality before,
Mhm.
but are interested in that field in their early stage of career? What are the transferable skills that you think are important to develop when you're going into a quality career?
Yeah. Um, I think the urge to solve problems.
Mm,
I don't look at the role of quality as ever being the thou shall do the things that I say.
yeah.
It's more about what is the challenge ahead of us,
Mm,
and how can we think through it. And so
yeah.
I think if people are very passionate about solving complex problems, quality could be a role for you. I think if you're very open to learning and understanding what the real challenges are, quality could be a role for you. I think where people sometimes don't succeed so well is coming in with the mentality of, I know the answer, I
Mm,
have the answer.
yeah.
And again, there's hardly ever an answer. There's the best answer for the situation in front of us. And so I think it's a lot of the just the curiosity, the quest for knowledge, really liking tough problems.
Mm,
I think critical thinking is one of those things that historically I haven't always seen an abundance of, but we're really starting to see that change. So instead of people having kind of this rules based way of thinking about things, so can I do this or can I not? What I'm starting to see a lot more of is people thinking about, how can I achieve this objective? What
mm,
are the challenges or the blockers? What are the first principles that I should be thinking about? And I think as long as people sort of have that open mind and higher level thinking, you're going to be very, very successful and happy within quality. And I
nice.
think honestly, like, your stakeholders will be happier with you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's really well put. So your career at Vertex, then. So when was your first? When do you look back and see as your first real people management leadership position?
Yeah. So when I started, I was within clinical quality. So an
Mhm.
area I was very comfortable with. in a quality role. And then I moved into more of a QMS quality systems kind of role, which
Mhm.
was where I had the first people manager role. And it was so great because there was so much that I didn't know, yet the way that I approached the problems was still very much the same. So, what our team was responsible for was within sort of the quality system. So, some of the more global processes within quality systems, really owning those and working to improve them in a way that could be applicable across the spectrum, whether you're talking about manufacturing, clinical, non-clinical, whatnot. And it was great. One of the first things that we did as a team was really go in and made sure that we understood what the actual standards were. So if we're talking about something like risk management, as an
Mm.
example, I think a lot of people have different perceptions of what risk management is and what the value of it is. And a lot of times it's around, doing the risk assessment.
Yeah.
But we actually would go back and look at and read everything that we could around any of the regulations or the international standards around risk management to really be sure that we understood that, as an example, it is a structured way of thinking through a problem and making decisions. That's what it is. It's not about the risk assessment. Like,
Mm.
make sure that you do the risk assessment. It's how do you actually incorporate um, critical thinking into the way that you're making decisions. So
Mm.
then when we were going through, we were doing these current state assessments. So like, what is the state of risk management
Yeah.
within quality? All of us went in with a very, very aligned view on what the intention of risk management is. And it was actually just a super fun activity. I mean, if you think about it, it was essentially like an internal audit of
Yeah.
global quality processes, but just a really fun way to approach it and then to really understand the different ways that people apply the same concept within different disciplines across the GXP spectrum.
That's really interesting. So, um, it's I guess it speaks to sort of evolving a quality culture, right, and how
Yeah.
people see things. So, what would you, in your, I guess, in your, now, how would you define what good quality looks like in your organization, in the industry as a whole?
Yeah. So I definitely take more of a Deming Duran kind of foundational perspective
Mm.
of quality. Um, so I'm not a like compliance person.
Yeah.
Um, when I think about what good quality looks like, you are making whatever it is that you are trying to address
Mm.
better. And what better means is so different depending on the situation.
Hmm.
So, good quality is, of course, you're always meeting the regulatory requirements.
Yeah.
But that alone is not enough
No.
because if you're not doing it in a way that is operationally efficient, then being compliant doesn't actually matter if you can't do the thing. And if you're an operator executing on some process, and I'm setting you up for failure to begin with, who cares how compliant this thing is, right? So I think a lot of what we miss within quality is just the ease of use of things, really thinking about things in like a systems perspective. So what is the totality of what we're trying to address and how can we do it in a really systematic way that you don't need to have like this specific historical knowledge. I think also it's a lot of being sort of, and I know that people use this term a lot, like fit for purpose, like really understanding our objectives. What are we trying to achieve in this thing? And being sure that when we're thinking about what are our objectives, we're thinking about, again, the full spectrum of
Mm.
objectives. There are certainly the compliance objectives. there are also a lot of business objectives. I think about also in terms of the patient. What's
Yeah.
best for the patient? Is it best for the patient that we spend so much time doing X thing that they never actually get access to the medicine? Like,
Yeah.
that's not good for anybody. And so
Yeah.
I think there's sort of being very well rounded in your thinking, and
Mm.
and clearly defining your objectives and what you're trying to achieve, and then setting up a system that allows you to do that well. That's what I would say is quality.
Mm. Yeah, we discussed last time sort of the phrase inspection readiness, I think, and like I suppose how potentially it's challenging outdated language and
Yeah.
maybe some of the dangers around using that sort of language. What are your thoughts on that phrase inspection readiness?
I do not mean to offend any of the listeners. I'm not particularly a fan of inspection readiness. I get the spirit behind it, right? Like, I get you always want to be inspection ready. I think the way that it's often used or interpreted, particularly by people who aren't in quality, they don't necessarily see the nuance of it. And what they may hear is something like, the reason why we do all of this the way we do is for that day that the inspector comes in and they're going to look
Mm.
at all of it. So we're going to do it in a way that they don't ask questions, they're happy.
Mm.
And that event happens, sure, but that's not why we're here. Like,
No.
that's not why any of us are in this business. We're here to make meaningful treatments for patients. And so when I'm thinking about what are my objectives, so if I'm designing some process, what are my objectives, I am not thinking about what the inspector is going to say. I'm thinking about, how do I do this in a way that is best for the patient, that is safe, that's really scientifically sound. Like, when I'm thinking about all of my quality objectives,
Mm.
I'm not thinking about, how do I make this, and this is how I interpret it, how do I make this like look good for the inspector? Instead, I
Mm.
think about, how do I actually make this good? Like, how do I make this successful? How do I make this meaningful? How do I add value? Um, those are the things that run through my mind, and I find inspection readiness to put wholly the emphasis on what an individual or set of individuals from an agency coming in your door will think about what you've done. And that also comes from a place of fear. And I think when you're operating from fear, you don't feel obliged to ask questions. You're just
Mm.
doing what you're told, because somebody told me that when the inspector comes in, this is what they're going to want.
Yeah.
And it really stunts the ability, I think, of people to ask questions and say, why are we doing this? Is there a different way that we could approach this?
Mm.
This thing doesn't make sense to me. And it kind of closes down the opportunity to have critical thinking. So
Mm.
again, I know the spirit of it is great. I think the application, and particularly again for those of us not in quality,
Mm.
just feels very like it not aligned with the purpose of why we're all
Yeah.
here.
Do you think there's like, how do you go about building that sort of mindset to move away from that fear driven mindset, I guess?
Yeah. um I think through asking questions like,
Mm.
why are we doing this?
Mm.
Do are we all aligned on why we're doing this? So if we're talking through, I don't know, we're going to put an audit program in place,
Mm.
right? If the questions that we're asking one another is, well, how do we do this so that they'll accept it, or it's going to look okay,
Yeah.
then we're really like narrowing our thinking. But if instead we're sort of coming at it with curiosity and saying, well, why do we even do audits? Like, what is the point? What are we trying to achieve here?
Yeah.
Suddenly people can really be engaged in the process and be thinking through, like, oh, this is why we do it, like, this is what we're getting out of it. and we're probably going to come to a much better outcome that is much more fit for purpose because we understand the purpose.
Yeah.
But if I'm coming at it from sort of a perspective of authority, well, then don't ask any questions because either you're going to look stupid or you're going to look,
Mm.
I don't know, non-compliant.
Yeah.
And so I think just that curiosity and really facilitating good, robust discussion,
Yeah.
um, the outcomes are always better. And then we're also just really aligned. And to get back to inspection readiness, suddenly when the inspector does come, if they ask questions, I no longer feel like I need to coach you on what to say and how to say it. And
Yeah.
because this is just what we believe, this is the
Yeah.
fabric of our ethos, our quality ethos. Um, and so nobody needs to train on that. We've built it
Right.
into the culture.
Yeah. 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 It sounds like you've really it's about making things real for people rather than following a textbook. I suppose on a real kind of basic level, it's making creating a culture and a mindset of how to really understand the purpose and the why behind we're doing things, and actually looking beyond a framework, and questioning things a bit deeper. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but that obviously you have to have good people in your team that adhere to, that could have the ability to look beyond that. Is that something that you like? How do you go about um, finding people with that mindset that you can
Yeah.
coach them?
Yeah. So I love that you use the term mindset because I do think about that in terms of like what is quality, and it is a mindset. It's a way of thinking.
Mm,
And whenever I'm interviewing people, I'm always looking like my favorite questions are, you know, what is the thing that has always sort of bothered you, or that you've always wondered, why do we do this? Or if only I was in charge, I would do X, Y, and Z. Like, what is that thing?
yeah,
Because if there's somebody who's like, yeah, I can't think of anything,
yeah,
just the way that I've done
yeah,
everything, every company I've worked for, every procedure was like totally made sense to me. um then that signals to me that it's somebody who doesn't have a thirst to make it better.
yeah,
And this whole like notion of continuous improvement, I think we use the term a lot, but like that's what we should be living, is everything has an opportunity to be better.
mm,
So the question that I love to ask in interviews is just like, what is that thing that, oh, you've seen it done like a million different ways, and like if you were in charge and you could redesign the whole process, like
mm,
you would do that. And I love to hear the different types of things that people reflect on, and it tells you a lot about even how people think through a problem. It tells you a lot about how in depth somebody has researched what are the first principles of that problem. um, and and then it's also just like a really great conversation starter. I also love people during interviews that are willing to say, huh, I don't know if I agree with that philosophy.
mm, yeah,
Let's talk through that. Because I think just being able to have now, also let me just very transparently say, a lot of the people, because we have a pretty small team, are a lot higher level, so they've
mm,
developed that confidence to be able to
hmm,
do that. I wouldn't expect somebody at more of an entry level
yeah,
sort of quality role to be able to do that, but it says a lot about just your confidence
yeah,
as a quality leader to be able to challenge.
yeah. I agree. I think that's a great question to ask. That really sort of speaks and delves into how someone thinks, and how proactive they're going to be. Are they going to do they have the ability to look beyond the norm, and challenge traditional thoughts and mindsets? Is it a challenge to find good people with that mindset?
I think it's becoming more frequent
Yeah,
that I can sort of interview people and that they're comfortable
yeah,
challenging assumptions. So
yeah,
so I'd say it's becoming more common.
mm,
Um, I think the challenge that I sometimes encounter is people want to have that type of mindset of
Mm.
like, I am here to make things better. And if
Yeah,
that
yeah.
means, we just implemented this thing and we realize that there's some vulnerability in our process and we need to go back and rethink a component of it or rethink the
Mm.
whole thing. People want to be comfortable
Yeah,
doing that and people want
yeah.
to speak up. Finding people who are then really proficient in doing that, that can be a challenge. And I think as a leader, that's something I take so personally, is creating the conditions where people feel safe
Mm.
and comfortable, and more importantly, obliged to
Yeah.
actively participate in the success of the company.
Mm.
Um, that is, as leaders, we
Mm.
need to be able to facilitate that. So I think it's more common that people are starting to have this mindset and entertain this way of thinking. um, Not as common for people to feel really really comfortable doing it, because sometimes
Right.
the thing that I kind of sense a little bit is like, are you tricking me? Like,
Yeah.
you're asking me for my feedback, but do you really want my feedback, or do you just want me to say like, yeah, this is great?
Yeah.
And the environment and the culture that we facilitate within our quality team, but then also within our organization, is like, speak up now, no time like the present.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you say something to sort of pacify or not be disruptive, we're going to end up with the same old outdated broken processes that we've had forever and
Mm.
ever and ever.
Mm. Yeah, I like it. What just to I guess round off and close off this discussion around like what good quality looks like, and um, quality obviously sits across an organization, um, and with that comes the responsibility to collaborate and communicate and work well with your different partners. But how do you I suppose measure impact as a quality leader and as a quality function as a whole? What how do you measure what good looks like in your role?
Yeah. So I think one thing is adoption. So whatever we're doing, we're not doing for the good of quality as the function. Whatever quality is working on. So if we are not working on things that are making an impact and a difference for our stakeholders, um, in order to further science, serve patients, develop great medicines,
Mm.
if it's not making a difference for others, we're failing. We don't exist to do things that serve quality. We do things that serve the community, the patient community, that serve science, that serve the company. And so we talk a lot within my organization around just value, and what is the value of this and how is it driving value for the company.
Mm.
A lot of our quality goals are directly, all of them are directly tied to company goals, because if we're
Mm.
not doing things that help us succeed on our goals as a company,
Yeah.
we're just there serving ourselves, and nobody needs that. So I think about quality as like really engaging with the stakeholders. And I know sometimes people can take more of a like independence type of philosophy, but like, we're quality, we're supposed to be independent. Well, you can conduct an independent audit while still very much engaging with your stakeholders to understand what's going to drive value for the goals. And so we're just very, very integrated in all parts of the company and all parts of the business.
Mm.
Um, because otherwise we're just not going to understand how we're adding value. And if we're working on anything and we can't in some way tie it to how it helps the company succeed, then we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. I want to touch on, I suppose, the future of both quality as an industry, but specifically within pharma and biotech. But um, especially with the adoption of new technologies and AI and um, digital transformation, it feels like that AI into the space is evolving. at a very fast rate, and particularly in the last year or so. And I think pharma and biotech, I've spoken about this before, but I think the industry as a whole is a bit behind other industries in terms of its adoption and of new technologies. What role do you think AI digital will play in quality over the next 5 years, and how will it change the role of a quality leader?
Yeah. So I think that in two, I think about this in two ways. So one, with more of the digital transformation, what I think that's going to allow us to do is become much more scientific about how we think through things. So when we're thinking through problems and applying critical thinking, making it very, very science based. So when we're doing risk assessments, I think a lot of times, like outside of med device, when we're thinking like within drugs, when we're doing
Mm,
risk assessments, a lot of times it's sort of this like high, medium, low, like red, yellow, green,
mm,
and a lot more qualitative than quantitative. I think starting to turn everything into data will allow us to be so much more quantitative, a lot more scientific, a lot more data driven. So that's one thing on the digital transformation. I love everything about it, is that every single thing can we turn into data? Can we start structuring investigations more? So it's not just like these I think it was great when we started to move to the types of tools that capture things within workflows. Still like a whole lot of free text space. And so the more that we can structure things, I think the more targeted we can get in how we analyze it. So I'm just so excited about really sort of transforming quality into more signal detection. Where are we
mhm,
seeing signals of issues? And that's like the proactive piece that we've been talking about forever and ever. So that makes me super excited. On the AI front, I think TBD on how we can use that once we get more data driven. But practically today, I think it starts to eliminate a lot of the inefficiencies that we have. So, a great example, when people are writing SOPs, we spend a boatload of time going through and creating like these little flow charts in Visio or Lucidchart. And there are a lot of excellent tools now that you put text into an LLM and it creates the flow chart for you. And sure, go like modify a little bit here and there, but
yeah,
now you're not spending, I don't know, 8 hours writing an SOP and creating the graphics for it. Have an LLM do that for you.
yeah,
Even with the writing of the SOP, like they're pretty good at doing things like that.
yeah,
I also think it's like a research assistant. It's
yeah,
amazing when you're thinking about sort of any challenge that you have when you're trying to make sure that you really really understand the first principles of it. Then just start going through Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever your product of
mm,
choice is, and what are all of the factors that have to do with like this particular problem. And it's coming up with really really great citations from regulation, global
mm,
regulation, different standards, like what ISO is saying about it. And it's really great at helping to sort of distill all of these disparate sources of information. So
mm,
I think right now, if people are not using AI in their jobs to help them be more efficient, you are being left behind. And I think another example that I just wanted to mention, because I realized this like last
mm,
week, is we're a Google company. We use Google products, and they have an outstanding note taking feature. So whenever you do a Google Meet, it's a note taking feature. These notes on this incredibly complex, meandering meeting were so, so good. And I started to think about the amount of hours saved from like the person who takes the notes and distributing them for people to
yeah,
review the notes. And it was really cool. So I think
yeah,
Jensen Huang from NVIDIA had a quote, I think it was last week or the week before, but something around like AI is not coming to take your job. It's the if you're not using AI, then people will take your job. So
yeah.
it's not the tool itself that replaces you, it's the people who know how to use the tools.
Well, it's giving you back time, isn't it? Because you're condensing activity tasks that will previously would have taken you hours on end. to a matter of minutes, which is giving you back, minutes, hours in your day, allowing you to focus on more strategic objectives
For
that you might have.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah,
and do the things that humans are really, really good at doing. You know, having critical thinking, like working through complex problems. It is giving you the time to be uniquely you, and giving you the ability to add the value that only you can add.
mm,
Nobody's adding value because they write a killer SOP.
right, yeah,
It's being able to work through. I'd much rather us be spending our time working through the actual process and like how do we want to approach this, and let's align on what we're trying to achieve, and let some AI tool write
yeah,
the procedure.
yeah. Just on that, delving into that a bit more, like what are some of those things that could never AI could never replace a human being within quality from that lens? What comes to mind?
Yeah. So I'll say on the procedure example,
Mm,
it's funny because people will talk about, and you encounter this a lot, especially within startup biotech. It's like, oh, I have all my procedures from my last company. Like, we'll just put them
mm,
in, or like, hey, we could just go buy like a whole set of procedures. The point is not the procedure. Like, the point's not to have the suite of SOPs. The
mm,
point is for us to work through what is the best way for us in this situation to do something.
right.
And AI is not going to be able to tell you that. AI is not going to tell you like how do you engineer a process that gets the outcomes that you're looking for with the resources that you have in the specific context in which you work. That's you and I talking through it and talking through the considerations and the limitations and what tools do we have at our disposal. Um, those things I think are uniquely human problems, like
Yeah,
us designing how we're going to work.
yeah,
Only we can do.
yeah,
Documenting that in a procedure format, let AI do that. It's really good
yeah,
at that. But I'm very much opposed to the concept of just like let's just go get the procedures and put them in place, because then you end up having a bunch of documents that nobody follows,
yeah,
because nobody took the time to design the process that was going to work for whatever it is that we're trying to achieve.
yeah. That's well put. Um, what are you looking ahead? What are you excited about for the future in your career and the industry as a whole?
Yeah. So I think one, the more that we are seeing quality professionals really embrace more of a business mindset, and adding value for the business, I'm just so excited to see where our industry will go. I'm excited to see just like how much more efficient we can be. I'm excited to see people who are, we have like the most passionate people within our industry, brilliant people within our industry. And when we can unlock some components that will allow people to be more and more impactful and efficient at what they're doing, I think we then unlock the potential to discover, develop, and commercialize drugs way faster at a much larger scale. And that I'm really looking forward to. I think, even when we see like any of the regulators talking, they've been saying for a really long time now, hey, we're not here to tell you like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like, come talk to us. Let's explore new ways of getting safe drugs to market and efficacious drugs to market in a much much more efficient way.
Mm,
And I think that's exciting. With the FDA now going and doing a lot of the roundtables and the meetings with
yeah,
industry, I think we're just going to continue to identify ways that we can do the work that we're doing so much better so that people have access to those treatments that they've not had for so long. And I'm just really excited about that.
Awesome. Ashley, I'd end the conversation, which I think has been fascinating. I've really enjoyed this. But I ended up with some quick fire questions, which I'm going to
Okay.
throw at you. So my first question is around your values. What are the sort of 2 or 3 most important values that you live and die by?
One, integrity. Be a good person.
Hmm.
Always be an honest, a genuine person. Um, and then I'd say the second thing is just true collaboration. It's not me or you, it's us.
Hmm.
We all win together. We all lose together. So I like a little friendly competition. I don't like cutthroat competition because I don't think life is a zero sum game.
Yeah. Who's been the biggest inspiration to your life? And this could be in a professional capacity. It could be in a personal capacity.
I'll go the professional route. I've
Hmm.
had the pleasure of having outstanding mentors, and not necessarily within quality, like business mentors as well. And I think there are a couple that have done a lot to make me a more well-rounded business person, and I've really appreciated those people. Um, I don't want to name names because I don't want to offend anybody who I then didn't name.
That's fine. 2 more. So if you were to, if you're hiring for your future successor, what are the attributes, the traits that you would look for in that person?
Yeah. Um, I think people who want to make the world a better place and who want to make the job that all of us are doing to bring drugs to market better. I think just somebody who genuinely their motivation is rooted in making things better, whether
Mm.
that means making it faster, making it more efficient, making it more data driven,
Yeah,
making things better.
yeah,
Never be
awesome.
satisfied.
Never be satisfied. Final question: what one piece of advice would you give to aspiring quality leaders?
Ask questions. Ask as many questions as you can. Um, when something doesn't make sense, sort of follow that intuition, because either it doesn't make sense because you don't have all of the context, or it doesn't make sense because it actually just doesn't make sense and there's a better way to do it. So I
Mm.
would say just have the confidence, or continue to build the confidence to always ask questions.
Brilliant. Ashley, that's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this. I think that a lot of people will get a lot of value from this episode, and you've had a really interesting career, really fascinating path to where you are now, and they've still got plenty more successes and achievements to make. So thank you so much for sharing all of that, sharing your journey, and giving us your time. And we'll definitely have another one with you in the future. It'd be great to see where you're at, where you're at in a couple of years' time, and how the industry has evolved. But yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's been really fun. So I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ashley.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I hope that you got value from it, whether you're starting your career in quality or if you're at the top of your field. Today's episode was brought to you by RX Group. I'm the founder of RX Group. We are a pharma and biotech recruitment organization focusing purely on quality assurance. We recruit consultants and senior level permanent quality professionals into the pharma and biotech industry. If we can support you, whether that be in a hiring capacity or if you yourself are looking for work, please get in touch with me on LinkedIn, visit our LinkedIn page where you can subscribe to the podcast, and visit our website, www.rx-group.io, to find out more about us. See you soon.